Hello, everybody. Welcome into a Thursday edition of the Computer America Show, and it is the third Thursday of the month, and that means it's our time for our All Linux Show. That's right, with Computer America correspondent Larry Bushey. He's going to be here with us for both hours, and of course, if you have any interest in Linux, this is a show that we've created for you. So we got a great topic for tonight, and
we should be having a listener.
What?
We should be having a new listener. We actually had a caller in a couple days ago, maybe like a week ago.
Yeah, he wanted to talk about Linux, so he might call.
Good.
And so
he actually came on the show, and he kind of got, I don't know if huffy's the right word, but he's like, you give a lot of airtime to Mac and Windows, but you don't give enough airtime to Linux. And it's a very important operating system, and we're like, slow down, man. We agree.
Yeah.
So he might come on tonight. So as a caller. So if he comes on, I'll put him right through and we'll let him talk. Okay. Anyway, everybody sit back, relax. We'll be starting the show in about 3 minutes, and here we go. Jonathan changed it to embrace.
You had that yesterday as well.
Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah, because I was putting the straight line and it didn't work.
3 minutes until showtime.
You can type the first character of the nickname, and then you hit the tab key and it fills it in.
Yep. I figured that one out.
Yeah. And also there's a /me command, which says.
You can tell that IRC chat was made by a programmer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tab completion.
Yep.
Syntax highlighting.
Yeah. The only thing that this doesn't have that I can ascertain from the add-on chat is there's no invisible mode.
Yeah.
Add-on chat, you could go like a ghost, invisible. I could see everything, but you couldn't see me as an admin. Mm-hmm. This doesn't have anything like that. So other than that, I think it's a great chat room because you don't have to deal with Java.
2 minutes until showtime.
Oh, that was messing things up badly.
Oh yeah. I like it because I can have 2 chat rooms going at the same time.
Oh, Jonathan got his Halo belts. He evidently heard him on the show and he got them. So.
What's a Halo belt?
Oh yeah, those are the LEDs.
Ah.
I asked him how.
Apparently, the guy that we had on, he took his experience from the days of DJing at nightclubs and mixed it with his inventive spirit and made them.
Why not?
Yeah.
So I mean, like if you could like think of like a rave, like with all the strobe lights and everything, yeah, fit in nicely there.
I thought we got one for our dogs.
Did yours arrive?
Yeah, we got them for the dogs. And
when?
1 minute until showtime.
When Aaron and Carissa were here, because they absconded with two with 2 of them from themselves.
What?
And Chris took one too.
They don't even have dogs. They have like beta fish.
They had the people. We had dog ones and human. We had both.
Oh, they took your people ones.
Yeah, they took my human ones. Yeah.
I was like, they have like one little fat dog and a couple of beta fish. Like, I don't think beta fish wear pet collars.
Yeah.
Really tiny ones.
It'd be adorable.
All right. Well, he's wearing it with his motorcycle jacket. All right, here we go.
Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting live. It's America's longest-running national radio talk show on computers, Computer America. Hosted by national columnist Craig Crossman. Look for Craig's weekly column in your favorite newspaper. This show is being beamed nationwide at ComputerAmerica.com. Keep it here for technology news, computer products, guest interviews, and your phone calls. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. It's the nation's longest-running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers. Computer America is heard around the world and coast to coast. And I'm your host, Craig Crossman.
And I'm your co-host, Ben.
And it is the third Thursday of the month, and it is our all Linux show. That's right, everything you want to know about Linux and more. This is the program to be listening to. If you have any questions about Linux, hopefully either myself or our guest, more than likely, is going to have the answer for you, or at least put you on the right track. Now, the way we're going to do this is, let me just bring him on, and then I'll give you the phone numbers and everything to call. So, as I said, his name is Larry Bushey. He's our Linux expert. He's also our Computer America correspondent. He's the creator and host of the Going Linux podcast. Larry, welcome to Computer America. How are you?
Excited as always to discuss the wonderful topic that I've chosen for our show.
Yes, Linux. Now, as I said, if you have a question, comment, or suggestion about Linux for us or for Larry, we welcome you to give us a call. We have open phone lines, 347-884-8881. We'll get you on and get you through. That's 347, area code 884-8881. That's the number to call. You can also send us an email if you like. If you're a little radio shy, you don't want to go on the air, but you have a question for our guest, you can send us an email to live, L-I-V-E, at computeramerica.com. You can also interact with us in our live interactive IRC chat room. Just go to our homepage at computeramerica.com, and you'll see there's a nice big blue button there. It says chat room /live video. Just click that, and it'll take you to our combo page, which has both our chat room and live video. It'll say connect to Freenode IRC, and it'll ask you for a nickname. That's the name you'll be known by when you go into the chat room. There's a CAPTCHA number or word there. You have to put that in, so basically it'll identify you. And once you do that, click the connect button, and your browser will move you right into our Computer America chat room. It's just that simple. Really easy to do, and you don't need Java anymore. It works with your internet browser. However, if you want a little fancier formatting, you can download one of several different plugins for your browser. I use Chatzilla. What is the one that you said that you use, Larry?
HexChat with an H.
HexChat. Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
HexChat. There are a number of them out there, and what that'll do is just it formats the chat room to be a little bit more visually pleasing. You can make a separate window for it. You can see the people participating in the chat room in its own separate window with the little different colored avatars signifying.
Maybe if someone else knows the answer to this and I just can't find it, Google Chrome has a surprising lack of skins for the IRC chat.
Well, it's just not really a skin. It's not a skin. It's an actual plugin.
Plug in and then it changes the look of it. And
right, exactly. Yeah,
I just can't call that skin, but Google Chrome lacks a proper plugin. Like the highest rated and most popular didn't work for me at all. Really?
Well, there might be a motivation for you to go to Firefox. You can run more than one chat room at a time, and I would suggest going to you can continue to run your Chrome, but run Firefox and download the Chatzilla client, because that's one of the things going to work for you on Firefox, and then you can make a separate window. It's really very nice, and we highly recommend that you do that. You can you have commands that are available on your mouse. You don't have to type in the / commands. It'll actually give you different commands that you can use from your mouse. And it just formats it very nicely. It's just a really nice setup. So we recommend that you do that. But please join us in our Internet Relay chat room, IRC chat room at ComputerAmerica.com. And the other thing on our chat room that you will see is our live Computer America video streaming page, okay, which it shares the chat room. So you can actually watch the Computer America show. You can actually see myself. You can see Ben. You can see Larry. You can see all of our, whoever's participating on the show as a guest are all here. And you can watch the live Computer America video stream. And that's brought to you by Other World Computing and Quality Products, expert support since 1988. They're now celebrating the 25th anniversary. Please visit them at www.macsales.com for all of your computing needs, whether you're looking for things for your Mac, for your Windows system, for your PlayStation 4, for your Xbox One. If you're looking for legacy products, you're looking for legacy memory for your older Mac. I mean, they have things for the Mac that it goes back to 1998. I mean, they really do have a lot of things. But if you want to, anything that you order from Mac Sales or Other World Computing, anything over $49, you get free ground shipping. And for 80% of the country, that means you're going to get whatever you ordered in 2 days. It's that fast. And they also have how-to articles like what is an SSD, what's a RAID. They have these how-to videos. They also have a terrific blog. They're rocketyard.com. I highly recommend that you subscribe to their blog. They have all kinds of interesting articles there. And as far as upgrade, just as an example, if you have a PlayStation 4 and you want to upgrade its hard drive, they have a 1 terabyte hard drive. They also give you a flash memory stick, even the screwdriver, for $115, $114.99, and it's a hybrid drive, so it's both solid state and hard. So it's a 1 terabyte hybrid drive. If you want something bigger, you can go to a 1.5 terabyte drive for your PlayStation 4. It's $159. Look, just go to macsales.com. Check it all out. They got some great values. Great deals going over there, and you're going to be happy that we put you onto them. Mac Sales, macsales.com. So I think we're getting ready. Now here's the thing that every month I ask Larry, look, we're going to get callers, what have you, but we always ask Larry to pick a topic for the show. Now you can follow along with us, because if you go to our show notes page at computeramerica.com, go to our show notes page, and it'll say click here to read the show notes. You'll see today's show, which is August 21st, and you'll see the Going Linux podcast, the paragraph, tonight's topic, everything is there. And then underneath that, you'll see 2 links. One says show notes, and the other one says emails. If you click on either one of those, it'll open up a Google Docs document, and you can actually follow along with us. And not only that, it's not only has the topics, but also if there are tables or links to the things that we're going to be talking about, all the links are there as well. So you can just kind of follow along, and if you see something that interests you, just click on the link. It's all there. So the topic for tonight is the most Googled questions about Linux and some answers. That's it. The most Googled questions about Linux and some answers to them. So that's the topic for tonight. And
the answers might even be the answers to the questions that are Googled about Linux. Or they might be just random answers that I picked off the internet, but probably not.
So let's get started. What are some of the most Googled questions asked about Linux?
Well, let me explain how I got started with this whole idea. So, you know how when you have Google search engine, just google.com, you just go there, and you start typing in the little box where you put your query in, it comes up with some suggestions. Well, I noticed that quite a few people on the internet have been talking about when you start to type a phrase, what does Google think you're going to type as the next part of it? So I decided to try doing that with some popular phrases around Linux. And of course, I thought, okay, well, let's take a look at the ones around Mac and Windows as well. And the Mac ones were kind of predictable. But the Windows ones, just as a taste, I typed in, why is Windows 8? And then looked at the 4 suggestions that Google gave. So those ones were, why is Windows 8 bad?
Mm-hmm.
why is Windows 8 so slow? Why is Windows 8 so bad? Why is Windows 8 so hard to use? And I thought, ooh, that's kind of a sad commentary on Windows these days.
Mhm.
I wonder how bad it is for Linux. So I decided to try a few of the searches. In the same vein, I varied it a little bit, and I tried 4 different prefixes to the question. So I tried the one that was similar to what I tried for Windows, and the first one was why is Linux? Then I tried can Linux, and then does Linux, and will Linux. So looking at past, present, and future, let's see what Google has to say. And from what I understand, these are the most popular queries that are being typed into Google at any particular time. So, if you were to try this next month, the actual responses you get or the suggestions you get might be different if a different question is being typed in more frequently. But this is what they were when I typed them in. So let's take a look at Google's first 4 query responses or suggestions to when I typed why is Linux. So first one came back as, why is Linux better? Well, this is already better than the Windows responses, right? So in answer to that question, you might think that the most popular versions of Linux available today can be described in a number of different ways. Linux is a modern operating system with an attractive user interface.
Now, when you say a modern Linux, we're talking that actually means something more than just date-wise.
Yeah.
There are certain characteristics to a modern operating system that are required. For example, it has like protected memory and things of that nature. So, if an application crashes, it doesn't bring the whole operating system down. That type of thing.
Right, exactly. So, and Linux has been designed to handle that exact thing. And technically, Linux is a modern operating system. So, from a technical perspective, it's a modern operating system. Design-wise, it's a modern operating system. So, it's designed for multiple users. It's always been designed for multiple users. It came out of Unix, which was designed as a multi-user operating system. So it meets that criteria as well. But also in terms of its user interface, it's a modern operating system. It has accelerated graphics. It has a lot of attractive 3D whiz-bang features to it, as well as having whiz-bang.
I love those technical terms that they use.
It is, yes. I'm sorry for getting too technical here. And so it's attractive. And you can get all kinds of different versions of Linux with different desktop environments and different levels of attractiveness, if you will. And you can pick one that's the most attractive to you. I guess it's kind of like dating. But and another thing that makes Linux better is its update manager keeps the operating system up to date, but not just the operating system with patches and security fixes and that sort of thing, but all of the applications that you've installed are updated as well and kept up to the current release. So it's better from that perspective. It's more secure. It is better supported than other operating systems that come pre-installed on most home computer hardware today, not mentioning any Windows operating system by name. Using Linux also provides you with the freedom to run a complete, full-featured operating system pre-configured with most, if not all, of the applications you'd be needing to use on a day-to-day basis. Or if you don't like a particular application, you don't like Hex Chat, for example, you can install Chatzilla or another chat client, and you can change everything about it, from the way it looks to the way it works or which applications it runs. So you can change it all up to suit your taste. So it's better than other operating systems from that perspective as well. There is much more variety as to what you can install, and all of the applications that you would install, well, I shouldn't say all. For the most part, the applications that you install are available from the Linux software repositories that are available from your Linux distribution, and most of them are available for free as well. You can also run Linux on almost any hardware, from the prettiest MacBook to the cheapest netbook, and from the newest Chromebook to some very old machines designed for Windows, and from the most powerful internet servers to the smallest smart thermostat run Linux as well. And we've taken a look at some of the weirdest places you can find Linux, and we have links to that in the show notes as well. So that's my answer to why Linux is better.
Okay. All
Does
right.
that make sense?
Yeah.
We've talked about most of this stuff on these Linux shows on Computer America before, but it's always good to review, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All right. So, now, so this came up, as you say. You just typed it into the Google search box, and
I just typed in why is Linux, and it came up with the word
Question.
better as the first suggestion.
you didn't click the I feel lucky. The
Nope.
button. Okay.
Wait for
Question.
it to populate. Yeah. Question.
Did you use a new browser for this?
I used Chrome.
Like was it the Chrome that you normally use and things like that? Because I know that depending on your past searches, Google will recommend things that are better matching to your searches.
Maybe so. What do you get when you type in why is Linux?
Okay, let me try that. Why is Linux... check that out. Why is Linux better? Better than Windows, more secure, free, faster than Windows.
There you go. There you go. So it does have a couple more different suggestions than the ones that I typed in last week when I did this, and we can answer that other one, faster than Windows, as well if you want.
Yeah.
So why is Linux more secure? That was one of the ones that came up in your search, Ben. So that's one of the ones that came up on my search as well. And so Linux is more secure for the following reasons, and there are quite a few. First, Linux users are not administrators by default. And I know that it has become the standard for most operating systems these days, but it wasn't always the case with Windows. And so Windows was well known for not being all that secure, and because of that, a lot of folks had the opportunity to write viruses and so on for Windows, and so that has continued on. Windows has gotten a little more secure over time. It's still a very big target of attack. And so the fact that Linux also is not immune to viruses, this is one of the queries and suggestions that I'll be answering a little bit further in the show, but it typically doesn't get the kind of attention from malware writers that Windows does. So getting back to the fact that Linux users are not admins by default, admins or administrators, also known as root access on an operating system. If you have root access or administrator access, it lets you do anything you want on your operating system, including damaging the system by typing in commands or otherwise. So even if Linux is compromised, the fact that you aren't by default running running administrator, if an intruder gets into your system, they can't do much damage. The damage is limited in its scope, typically to the user's local files. And that's because the infection is running as you in your computer, and if you're not an administrator, you can't, you're limited as to how much damage you can actually do. You can damage all the files you created, but you can't damage the system files by default. Okay. So when you click on a file as well, here's another area of security. When you click on a file in some other operating systems that shall go nameless, the system looks at the file extension, like .jpeg or .exe or .pdf to determine which program the operating should use to open the file. Linux, on the other hand, opens the file for what it is, not what the file extension says. So let's say you've received a file that ends in .jpg or .pdf. If the file is actually a virus installer program and not a picture or a document file, as the file extension would indicate, then when you open the file in Linux, Linux will know that it's an installer program. It will tell you that you're about to run a program and ask if you want to proceed. It will also prompt you for your password if you say you want to proceed. So remember, if you do say that you want to proceed and you enter your password and you click OK at that point, then you've just invited an infection into your system, and it's all on you, fella.
So it's not just a "Are you sure?" It's "Are you sure?" and then "Are you really sure?" And it's like, seriously, are you really sure?
Really sure? Yes.
Okay.
Well, you know,
So-
it's interesting because I know on the Mac, for example, I would find that, how should I say, it's one more thing that I have to do, and Apple gets around it because Apple, the Mac OS 10, knows the file that you have or you're about to open was downloaded from the internet.
Yes.
So it comes up and says, you just downloaded this file from the internet. Are you sure you want to open it? And then you go click, and so it'll give you that warning before, so you can go, oh no, I didn't mean to do that, and
Right.
and use it to do it. But if now. Is that similar from what have on Linux, or can you configure Linux to do that, or I mean, how does that compare?
Well, sure, you can do anything you want on Linux, including bypassing all of that security if you want. Not that I would recommend you do that, but there are two areas where Linux treats installations of files differently. So one is installation of files from the package manager or from the repositories. If you go into the package manager and say, I want to install Firefox, for example, it will install it. It will ask for your password once, and it will just go ahead and install because it knows it came from the repositories. It knows that it's the programs in that repository have already been vetted. So it's only going to ask you once. Now, because it's installing software, it's going to ask you for your password to make sure that it's you and to elevate your privileges to administrator, because you can only install software if you're an administrator. That's why it asks for the password. Now, if you download something off the internet, on the other hand, and it looks like a picture file, like it ends in .jpg, but it's actually an installer, Windows, the operating system that shall remain nameless, it will say, oh, this is a JPEG file. I should open it in whatever Windows picture viewer is. I don't even know what it is these days. And because it's looking at the file extension. Well, Linux doesn't look at the file extension to determine what program to open it. It'll say, oh, this is an executable program. That means you want to run it as a program, and if it's an installer, you want to install the software. And that's why it goes through this multi-warning system, if you will, because it says, are you sure you want to run this program? Even though it ends in .jpg or .pdf or something like that. And then it will, if you say, yes, I do, it's going to ask you for your password because you need to be an administrator to install something. But then if you click OK, you're done. It goes and installs it. Now, if it's a Windows virus that you've just said could execute, so a virus that's designed to attack Windows, one of two things will happen. Either the installation will fail, or it won't be able to infect anything other than programs you're running using Wine. And Wine is an environment that allows you to run Windows programs inside of Linux. And if you've got that program installed, that environment installed, the virus can infect that in some cases. Not all cases, but in some cases it can. And so it might infect that. To disinfect it, you simply uninstall Wine and all of the associated packages and reinstall it, and you're back without the infection. Unlike if you were actually running Windows, you'd probably spend a few $100s getting it removed. if it wasn't one of those that your antivirus software that you spent a few $100s for checks and finds and prevents from running. So that's why Linux is more secure, for all of those reasons.
Yeah, and it's quite a number of them.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the next one was, why is Linux free? Well, although you can find some versions or distributions of Linux that will allow you to pay money for them, that you can purchase, the vast majority are provided for free and free of charge. And Linux is licensed in a way that allows anyone to give the operating system away for free, no strings attached. The license that it's licensed under gives any member of the Linux community, Linux user community, the freedom to use Linux for any purpose they want, to distribute it to anyone they want, to modify the operating system, to redistribute it, even sell it with the modifications that you've made. And if you do modify the software, then redistribute it, then you're required by the Linux license to submit your modifications back to the original distributor for inclusion into future versions. Now, of course, there's no guarantee that that will ever happen, especially if the modifications you made were very bad. But if you've made Linux better in any way through your modifications, then your changes might just be included in the next release of the distribution you chose in the first place. So that's the primary reason why Linux is free of charge, is because of the way that it's licensed. Now, by doing that, this is how Linux can continually improve and grow over time, without having to charge money for its users. Many of the users of Linux are corporations that use the operating system to run their business, or they can include it in the products like Google Android phones or Chromebooks or Samsung televisions. Each of those include a version of Linux in them. Many of the Samsung televisions do, especially the modern ones. And if you want to know some more information about where you can find Linux, we've got show notes and a link in the show notes to the episode where we discuss the oddest places you'll find Linux. And many of those corporations that use Linux or incorporated into their software, into their products, provide fixes and new features for Linux as they're using it for their business. And because of the licensing, they're required to provide that back to the distributor of Linux or the developer of Linux. And these improvements end up back in the Linux distribution that they started with, and then if they're good, and if they're applicable generally. And so then if they end up in one distribution, because it's all one big community, it's likely that they'll end up in other distributions as well. So whether you're a home user of Linux, a Linux software or Linux application developer, or an employee of a company that uses Linux, you're a member of that Linux user community one way or another. And so you can get Linux for free because they don't charge for it.
And that's one of the nice things about Linux, is that it's a free operating system. Now there are, of course, there are many distributions out there, and some distributions will charge you, but they're really not charging you for the Linux. They're really charging you for support, because if you need help, you actually have a phone number that you can call and ask for help, rather than through a public forum. And some people like that, having that little extra security blanket. And of course, if you're a business using Linux, I would think that then you really, want to have something like that going on. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, a lot of businesses will use Linux for their servers, for their internal network servers. And many companies run Red Hat Linux, and Red Hat is probably the most popular, one of the most popular for sure for businesses. And there's a community version called CentOS where there is no support, but if you get Red Hat, you can purchase support from Red Hat, and they'll provide it for you.
That makes sense. All right, listen, we're at the bottom of the hour break. You listen to the Computer America Show on the Blog Talk Radio Network, on the Boost Radio Network, on the IRN Radio Network. It's our All Linux Show tonight with Larry Bushey. We're going to break. We have a News Tips Bulletin review coming up. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, have you heard about the No hair removal device that's sweeping the globe? If you want to go weeks without shaving and get smooth, professional quality results, here's our favorite host, Cheryl, for No hair removal.
Thanks. Hey gals, I love talking about my No. It's this cute little hair removal system that you can take with you and use almost anywhere at home or on the road. No more expensive in-office treatments, painful waxing, and no more wasting your valuable time. Got unwanted facial hair? No has patented thermocon technology that works on all hair and skin colors, so it's perfect for using on all body parts. And now you can take advantage of this incredible risk-free trial. Get the No, the facial kit, a travel case, and a $100 discount shopping card, and you don't risk a penny to try it. Try the incredible No hair completely risk-free. Call 1-800-953-5415. 800-953-5415.
Looking for a best friend? Brother Wolf Animal Rescue has your best friend waiting just for you. Their mission is to protect and enhance the lives of companion animals and the people who love them. Their no-kill rescue shelter is open year-round, making it easy for people to adopt their best new friend. This year, Brother Wolf will find homes for over 2,400 orphan dogs, puppies, cats, and kittens. All have ended up as an orphan through no fault of their own. Brother Wolf has created a safe, where these special animals can heal emotionally and physically until they find a lifelong home. Their life-saving transport program brings dogs and puppies from overcrowded shelters in the south to rescues in the north where homes are easier to find. Brother Wolf Animal Rescue is a 501c3 organization. To learn more about their life-saving work and to make a donation, visit their website at www.bwar.org. That's www.bwar.org. Help to realize Brother Wolf's vision when no animal is euthanized for lack of a home.
Who's a good boy?
Hi, this is Marty Winston for Computer America with a News Tips Bulletin Review of the Ventev R2240 Dashport 2 by 2.4 amp lighter plug USB adapters. Now, we used to call it a lighter plug. It's now called a 12-volt accessory socket. And not many 12-volt adapters that we've tried provide enough juice to power and charge a pair of tablets. So we were thrilled when the Ventev Dashport R2240 dual output universal charger arrived. It's long and slender, with one USB power port at its tail, another on its side, each rated at 2.4 amps, so that's 4.8 amps total. Its length and shape, long and skinny, may collide with the shift selector in some cars, so do check that out before deploying one. We especially like it as a way to feed a pair of power-hungry, high-capacity power pucks in the car, making for a lot of utility and longevity without eating up the whole center console. Bottom line, the Ventev Dashport R2240 dual output universal charger delivers more current than most other current alternatives. America.
Welcome back to the Computer America Show. That was Marty Winston with the News Tip Bulletin Review. We have two new ones every week, and that was the first one. We'll have a second one in the second hour. But in between all of the news tip bulletins, we have a show that we like to do, and tonight's show all about Linux and Larry Bushey. And we were just getting to the part of the show notes, which Craig, I assume earlier you mentioned everything about the show notes. If you want to read along and all that good stuff.
Yes, exactly. It is in the show notes, and as I mentioned earlier.
Now, if you're listening to this in the future, maybe post 3 weeks, good luck. But so I believe we were still on Linux is free, but not always free. It's free until you need it not to be free.
Right. If you want to pay for support, you can pay for support. And, of course, if you want support, you don't have to pay for it. There are plenty of chat rooms and podcasts like the Going Linux podcast and our support that we provide here on Computer America. So lots of that good stuff. And I think we're pretty much done with that particular topic.
Okay.
So the fourth thing that came up when I typed why is Linux into Google is better than Windows. And so just rewind, if you're listening to this in the future, just rewind and re-listen to the last 3 answers to the questions. All of that is why it's better than Windows.
And that's all you're going to say on that topic?
That's it. Everything we just talked about everything we needed to say about it. It's already there.
That's a little Forrest Gumpish, isn't it? And that's all I have to say about that? Okay. All right.
Yeah, having said this about that, let me say that. Okay.
There was the one that I found, which is why is Linux faster than Windows?
Right. Well, you'll find sometimes that when you install Linux to replace an operating system like Windows that's been on your computer for a while, and people are doing this now with Windows XP because Windows XP support has come to end of life. And so they're looking for ways to keep that perfectly good computer still running and still functional but supported. And one way to do that is to install Linux on there. And when they do that, they find, wow, what a performance improvement. And part of it is because over time, Windows builds up cruft. It really just the stuff goes into the registry that relates to software that you installed at one time and then uninstalled, and maybe there's an antivirus software running on your Windows computer and you don't have one running on your Linux computer because you really don't feel like you need one. That will slow down Windows as well. The other thing is some Linux distributions, especially those that use a very lightweight window manager. Now, for somebody who's used Windows or OS X, a window manager may be a foreign term. Windows comes with the Windows window manager. Mac comes with a window manager. I forget the name of it right now, but it is part of the OS X operating system. And in each case there, you've got one choice. With Linux, you have multiple choices. So you can have one that uses 3D acceleration, that has wonderful graphics that show drop shadows and allow you to have animated windows and that sort of stuff. But all of those special effects take processing power and in turn slow down potentially your computer. And so if you use a lightweight window manager, some examples of the names of those would be Mate or Mate, M-A-T-E, or XFCE. Those don't have the same sort of 3D compositing and special effects. And as a result, they are less heavy on your processor and your computer's processor and the graphics processor and on the RAM that it uses to run your computer. So it will run faster if you use a lighter weight window manager. So those are the reasons why Linux may seem faster or actually be faster in your case than Windows on the same machine.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
So now, answer to the first 4 queries when you enter can Linux into Google, right?
Yeah, so can Linux. So the first one I got was, can Linux read NTFS? And NTFS,
I thought it was Linux in a can, can Linux.
Yeah, can Linux. Okay. Well, that's not what Google thought we meant anyway.
Right.
So NTFS is a file format for Windows. It is the file format that Windows has used since Windows NT. And they've used it on Windows Vista, and they've used it on Windows 7, and so on and so on. It's the modern file format for Windows. So the question really is, if I have a hard drive where I've stored files when I was using Windows, and I formatted it in NTFS, am I going to be able to read the files on that disk? And the answer is yes. Most Linux distributions actually come with that capability pre-installed. And so it will do that out of the box in most cases. And if your particular distribution doesn't come with the ability to read NTFS files out of the box, you just go into the repositories of the package manager and install a package called NTFS-3G. I don't know what the 3G stands for, but that's the package you need. And it's a little utility that allows Linux to read and write to an NTFS formatted hard drive. And that's it. That's all you need, and it installs in seconds. So if it's not already pre-installed in your Linux, go to the package manager, install it, and you'll be able to read and write to your NTFS hard drives within seconds.
Okay.
All right. So the next one came up, can Linux run Windows games? And the answer is yes and no.
I love that.
So I'm hedging my bets here. So Windows games.
Are you racked by indecision? Well, yes and no.
Yes and no. Yeah, maybe not. But Windows games don't run natively under Linux. Well, let's face it, they're designed to run under Windows. So, but however, there are a wide variety of games and other software that's commonly run on Windows that have versions that also run on Linux. So it's not the Windows program running on Linux, but it's the same game, or it's the same program, but it's just written for Linux. It's like Photoshop or something else that's written for Windows and you run it on your Mac. Or it's written for Mac and you run it on Windows. They're not the same program. You can't install the OS X package on a Windows machine and expect it to run, but it's Photoshop, okay? Same thing with Linux. So many of the games will run cross-platform, as they call it, between Windows and Mac and Linux. There is a version for that. And browsers are an example that's a little more practical to think about. Firefox is available for OS X, it's available for Windows, and it's available for Linux as well. It's not the same program that runs on each of those platforms, but it is still Firefox, written for that operating system. Chrome, another web browser.
And that's a good thing. But let people say, oh, it's not written for. No, you don't. You want it to be written for the operating system. You don't want it to be written for another, because if it's written for another operating system, you have to be running some sort of emulator, and it's taking more processor power. Right. So you want it to run natively. Sure.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes, if you can't find the game that you want to run, a version of it for Linux or other software that you want to run, that you've been running on another operating system, there are alternatives. So, and those alternatives may be very similar to that game that you want to play, but maybe it's just got a different packaging to it, or maybe it's an older version of it, or maybe it's a newer version of it, just written a little bit differently. LibreOffice is an example of an application rather than a game that fits this category. So it's an example of a full-featured Office suite. It's pre-installed on most Linux distributions today, and is an alternative to Microsoft Office. So it has a word processor, a spreadsheet, a presentation maker, and some things that actually Microsoft Office doesn't offer as well. So it's not the same program at all. It's not designed to be the same program, but it's an alternative that performs the same function, and it even reads and saves to the Microsoft Office file format. And another alternative might be to run those Windows games or other applications on Linux using that program I mentioned earlier called Wine. So Wine allows many Windows games and applications like Photoshop or like Microsoft Office to run in a Windows-like walled garden inside of Linux. And today many games and applications run in the cloud, and that means it doesn't matter whether you're using Linux, Chrome, OS X, or Windows, or any other operating system. As long as you have a browser and a connection to the internet, you can run whatever that program is. So lots of alternatives, but the answer to the question, can Linux run Windows games, is yes and no, depending on what you're talking about.
Well, I mean, if since you brought up that topic, did you mention Steam has an entire section just for?
No, and I thought you might mention that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Steam actually does. Yeah, it has a version of Steam that runs under Linux, and of course, because the games are running on the Steam platform, many of the games have been made available for Linux just as they are available for Windows. So, and in fact, the folks at Steam are reported to be building a Steam box, a dedicated Steam console, if you will, based on Linux. So
I
I
heard
haven't
that
seen that yet.
I heard that got put on the back burner or something.
It could very well have been.
Didn't we do a story on that a while back? That Steam basically was
Yeah, I didn't want to break the news, but apparently they're trying to. Steam is trying to co-make it with other computer-making companies, just so they can, split the cost or whatever. And every company they keep approaching keeps backing out at the last second, kind of, leaving them dry. So unfortunately, it's on the back burner until another computer company picks it up.
Hey guys at Steam, try a company that doesn't make computers for Microsoft Windows.
Yeah.
Okay, they may be influencing that decision after you've gone in there to try to negotiate the agreement. So
you named a couple of computer companies on a past show that just make Linux computers. You named a couple. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's System 76.
Yeah, it was
is one that makes computers that are specifically provided for Ubuntu Linux, but you can install any Linux you want on them. But they come with Ubuntu on them. And another one is ZA Reason or Zareason. And they come with whatever version of Linux you ask them to install on it.
Mm-hmm.
Each of those companies purchases their computers or builds their computers themselves. And if they purchase them typically from a Chinese manufacturer. And let's face it, most of the Windows computers these days are made in China anyway. And then they configure them and install them, but they handpick the components if they're going to build it, or they handpick or have the company that builds the hardware build it to spec so that it is specifically designed to run Linux. And so, you could probably approach one of those companies, but they're pretty busy filling the Linux orders. They really are. But hey, there's a couple of suggestions right there. All right.
Okay.
Next up is, can Linux read exFAT?
Okay.
So I had to Google for exFAT. What is exFAT? I had no idea what that was. And what I found is it's a Microsoft proprietary patented file format that they use for flash drives. And it was introduced in the days of Windows CE. And it being proprietary and patented, nobody else uses it except Microsoft. And according to our friends at Wikipedia, it was designed by Microsoft to get over the file size limitations and other limitations of FAT32 and NTFS when used on thumb drives and SD cards. So the answer to the question, can Linux read files that are in a flash drive using the exFAT file format? Yes, it can. So don't worry about that one. So file formats, easy peasy for Linux. Okay, next. Interesting. Can Linux get viruses? And the answer is yes, but it doesn't. So there are some excellent antivirus software programs for Linux, and we've got a link in the show notes to them. Whether or not you want to install an antivirus on your Linux computer is really up to you. In theory, Linux can get viruses and other infections just like any other operating system. But despite Linux Journal's LinkBait article, and we have a link to that, where they entitled it "Linux Security Threats Rise," in there they state that there's an increase in the threats for Linux because of the increase in the size of the code base of Linux and because of the ever-growing popularity of Linux. I'm not sure that's a valid assumption to make, okay, is because Linux is growing and becoming more popular, there are going to be many more security threats. Yeah. There are a few out there, and if there are a few, if any of those that are out there that actually persist in the wild. In reality, there's been at least one public infection that infected Linux in the past 10 years. That one is no longer a threat to anybody installing it or using a modern Linux distribution. No. And so Linux is designed actually to be difficult for viruses, rootkits, and other malware to be installed without conscious intervention by the user, as we discussed earlier.
Well, I need to ask you this question because I can tell you People say, "Oh, there are very few viruses, for the Mac," and
Mhm.
then the comeback you'll hear is, well, because there are not as many Macs, and the viruses aren't written because they can't infect the Mac. It's just because if the virus writers want to get the most impact, and so they write for Windows because that's the larger number. Would you say that applies to Linux, that there are less viruses written for Linux because it's an even smaller number, that we're talking about, or is it just because Linux is hard to write a virus for, or is it a combination?
It's partially because of that, and if it's true for Mac, it's true for Windows. I mean, it's true for Linux, and it's true partially because they're both based on Unix, and Unix is designed as multi-user operating system, and because it's multi-user, it's got a lot of sandboxing built in, and as a result, one user can get infected while another one can be completely infection-free, and typically it's very difficult to infect any sort of operating system that's based on a Unix platform. So it's equally difficult to write viruses for Mac and for Linux. Now, so it's partially because Linux and OS X are less popular, that there aren't as many viruses written for it, or people attempt to write them. But it is also because it's more difficult to infect. If you did succeed in infecting a machine, likelihood that you have root access to extend that infection throughout the rest of the machine and to other machines is pretty low. And as a result, these virus writers are trying to get their infection as wide as possible because they want to send out spam, or they want to infect other computers to lock their files down so that you have to pay a ransom to get them back. And if your infection is sandboxed within the operating system, you just don't have the same payback as a virus writer or malware writer. So that's mainly the real reason there, is because it's much more difficult, and the payoff for the malware writer is much less. So we've got a link in the show notes as well for why Linux is more secure, and you might want to click on there and read more in the details on that one.
Okay.
We could go on and on and on with these, and I know we've got about 10 minutes before the top of the hour, and I know we're not going to get through the rest of all of these responses, so please do go to the show notes and read them. We'll get through as many as we can, but if you're interested in the answers to does Linux and will Linux, and we don't get to the one that you're interested in, just check out the show notes. We've got the responses there.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so let's go on to does Linux. So when I typed does Linux into Google, it did an interesting thing. It put words in between. So it went, does Minecraft work on Linux? Well, we just talked about games on Linux, and yes and no. But in the case of Minecraft, yes, the answer is yes. And we've got a link in the show notes to how to install Minecraft in Ubuntu, which is a version of Linux. And any Debian-based or Ubuntu-based computer will probably be able to follow those instructions word for word and get it installed. Now, if you've got a Red Hat derivative, or you're using Arch or some other derivative that's not based on Debian Linux, then you may have to modify it a little bit, but the answer to the question, does Minecraft work on Linux, is yes. So for those Minecraft folks out there,
good.
You got it. And we got instructions for you, links in the show notes.
Yeah.
Next was, does iTunes work on Linux?
I was surprised at the answer to this. I had actually already known it, but yeah, it's still surprised me.
Well, the answer is no. And that's because Apple has specifically designed iTunes not to run on Linux.
They went out of the way to do it, in other words.
Yes, exactly. And so you could run an older version of iTunes under Wine, but it would immediately try to update itself and probably wouldn't function properly with Apple servers. And as a result, if you did the upgrade, within the wine environment. The new versions don't run because Apple goes in and breaks the compatibility with its ability to run under wine, even the Windows versions of iTunes. So although Mac OS X has its roots in the same Unix operating system as Linux, OS X is not the same as Linux, and applications written for Apple's operating system don't automatically run on Linux. So there are plenty of alternative media players, though, that will run on Linux, that are designed for Linux, that will play music, create playlists, sync with mobile devices, retrieve and manage play podcasts.
Can you run like Wine or something and have it work with on Linux then?
Not really, because you could get an older version of iTunes to work, but it's not going to work with Apple.
They're going out of their way to make sure that it's not going to work.
Exactly. So use Amarok or Banshee or some other Clementine or the media players that are designed for Linux. Those are the best choices. And chances are the distribution you choose already has one that will do everything you want it to do. Manage your playlists, play podcasts, download podcasts, sync with your phone.
It will. You can sync with the iPhone and everything. It will work.
Sure. Oh. Yep, I've used it to sync with an iPhone, with an Android phone, with a BlackBerry in the old days, so it all works.
Okay, good.
Next, does Netflix work on Linux?
This better be a yes.
Yes, it is a yes. And it wasn't that long ago that it didn't. And it doesn't work out of the box, but there are some instructions in the show notes on how to watch Netflix on Ubuntu. That's my phone. It'll stop in a second. Okay. And we'll include that in the show notes. It's too lengthy to go into, but essentially what you need is Netflix on Ubuntu or a Debian derivative, and it uses HTML5 and the Chrome browser. And if you've got those things, you can make it work.
All right.
No problem.
Okay,
so here we go. Ben, this one's for you. Does Steam work on Linux? The answer is yes. And there's a recent update. We've got a link to the recent update, the new Steam client, an update from Steam on the latest news. So it may not be breaking news, but it's the latest news. So we'll have a link in there to the show notes, unless you have a comment to make, Ben.
No, just, Steam has long been, Gabe Newell has actually been a long-time supporter of Linux, and he loves the open source. So, I mean, if video games are the one weakness of Steam, then, give it a year or two, and it will no longer be a weakness.
Yep.
Exactly. Here's what I'd like to do. There is one more which for this, and I think I want to do them.
Okay. We can do them after the break then.
We'll do them after the break. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we'll go on. You're listening to the Computer America Show on the Blog Talk Radio Network, on the Boost Radio Network, and on the IRN Radio Network. And again, if you just to quickly cover a couple quick things here. Go to computeramerica.com and go to our contest page. It's under the first pull-down menu. You'll see that we have tomorrow we're going to have our show reminder winner of the week, and that some lucky person is going to win a T650 rechargeable glass touchpad. We give away one of those every single Friday, and the way you do that is you subscribe to our weekly email newsletter, the show reminder. You just click on the contest page. You put your first and last name and your email address. Click the blue submit button. It'll send you a confirmation email to which you must reply. We want to make sure that it's you who wants to be on the show reminder list, and then you're in. The show reminder is the only publication in the universe that tells you who's going to be on the Computer America Show for the entire week. Okay, so it's really useful. We have interesting links and things on it. And again, it's completely free. It's completely confidential. And from that list of subscriber names, every Friday we draw a winning name to win a really nice prize, that T650 touchpad from Logitech. And also, while you're there, enter in our Logitech contest. This is the last 6 weeks where we're giving away these prizes. We're going to have a refresh of the prizes next 6 weeks. So there's some really great ones there. Just follow the instructions. Enter in all of our contests at the contest page at computeramerica.com. It's all private. It's all confidential. They're all free. you know, you'll have a lot of fun playing and entering, and who knows, you might win something really nice. Okay, we have another hour of the Computer America Show coming at you. Larry Bushey, our correspondent, Linux correspondent from the Going Linux podcast. We're going to just break for a few moments, and then we'll continue on with more Linux here on the Computer America Show.
Broadcasting live, it's the only national radio talk show on computers to air every weeknight. Computer America, hosted by national columnist Craig Crossman. The first hour's behind us, but there's still more of tech news, tech talk, and your phone calls. We're being beamed nationwide at ComputerAmerica.com. You got computer problems? Bring them on. You're listening to Computer America. Computers run the world, and we run computers. Call us or send us an email to live@computeramerica.com.
Hello and welcome into Hour 2 of the nation's longest-running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers. This is the Computer America Show, and I'm your host, Craig Crossman.
And I'm your co-host, Ben.
And we're continuing on here with Larry Bushey. Ben, you look different. You have spots now.
Thank you.
And you're way more fuzzy than I remember you.
Yeah, I do well.
And you have this silly little grin on your face.
Thank you.
And you look really, really tired.
These things do happen.
Yeah.
So where were we?
We're doing our All Linux show with Larry Bushey, and normally we go into the emails, but I mean this is really interesting. This basically the most Googled questions about Linux and some answers, and I thought we have one more section to do, and I thought let's do those. Let's include it and get it in there into the last section. So we're gonna do that, and then we'll go to the email that Larry gets sent to him every month. And again, you can follow along. Just go to our show notes page at ComputerAmerica.com. You're going to see the show notes on today's show, the 821st listing, and there's a link there that says show notes, and that's what we're talking about now. And then after that, you click the email link, and you can see all the emails we're going to be discussing as well. It just makes it easier to follow along. Of course, you can also watch us on our live Computer America video streaming page brought to you by Other World Computing at www.macsales.com. So the last of the answers to the the queries when you enter it in as will Linux, correct?
Yeah, so we're looking into the future now. So will Linux, first response that Google suggests is, will Linux overtake Windows? Well, it already has in some cases. Yes. So maybe not on the desktop or in all countries, but Linux is, however, reported to be running 60% of the servers in the world, 70% of the web servers in the world, and 95% of supercomputers.
Wow.
Yeah. So, it may not be the most popular on the desktop because it doesn't come pre-installed on most computers, but it certainly runs most computers in the world.
I can understand that on supercomputers because they're trying to get every flop that they can get, and so obviously Windows is got a lot of overhead that they don't need, so they're trying to find a lean, mean operating system for these computers because they're trying to get they're trying to get into the petaflops, right on their teraflops. They're trying to get the petaflops, which is a floating point operation. So I could see that makes a perfect sense. Linux running on supercomputers.
Yeah. So, and that's just talking about the traditional computer hardware. Linux-based Android mobile device operating system is on the vast majority of smartphones and tablets that are in use today. On the computer desktop, it's difficult to quantify what percentage of computers run Linux because Linux is free, and so there's no financial motive for anyone to track sales, if you will, like there is with other operating systems. And it's also difficult to compare the numbers of Linux installations with other operating systems because Linux can be installed simultaneously on the same computer as those other operating systems. So these dual and triple boot systems are likely counted only once as a sale for the operating system that came pre-installed on the hardware, and they never get added to the statistics for Linux, even though that same computer may be running 1, 2, 3, or more distributions of Linux in a multi-boot scenario. So lots of things going on, and many of them are computers running Linux, even if the computer is one that you sit in your hip pocket and you make phone calls on. Right?
Okay.
Yeah. So the next suggested response or suggested query from Google when I typed in "Will Linux" was "Will Linux run on a Mac?" And the simple answer is yes. The Apple Mac computer, unlike many cheap Windows computers, use some very high-end hardware components from very selected manufacturers. And as a result...
He's not saying all Windows computers are cheap, Ben. Some of them are really nice.
Well, yes, some of them are quite nice, but take any netbook and put it next to a MacBook Air and tell me which is better.
Look, I'm not expecting him to come into the Linux show and be mad when Linux is, smack talks other users. That's not the time nor the place.
I'm not. I'm just saying it like it is. Okay. So, because let's just get back to the topic here, because Apple computers have a very selected number of manufacturers that they work with. And typically they use high quality components. Let's just put it that way. Let's not compare them to those cheap Windows computers. Because they do that, Linux support for Apple hardware is pretty easy to accomplish. And in the past, Apple's method of booting their machines, that's using EFI instead of BIOS, which is the traditional way that Windows computers were booted, historically, that required an installation of some special software to allow Linux to be installed alongside of OS X. But that's no longer the case. Today's modern Linux operating systems can be installed on a MacBook Air, MacBook Pro, iMac, Mac Mini, whatever it is, just as easily it can be installed on any other hardware. And we have Windows 8 to thank for that.
And it's native. In other words, this is a native Linux operating system.
Yes.
You don't have to have OS X and and have it running on the separate
virtual machine.
Virtual machine. Exactly. No, you can run Linux natively on the Mac. Yes.
Yes.
Implementations for that.
Okay. And so just as you can with an old Windows computer that was designed for Windows XP, if you have an old MacBook Air, for example, or a MacBook Pro, or just a MacBook that you can't install the latest version of OS X on, and you want to run something that is supported, you could install Linux on there, completely remove OS X or OS 9, I guess, on some of the older ones, and run Linux on there and get that hardware back in functional order and supported with a modern operating system.
Have they done any kind of benchmarks that taking Linux and put on one of the new Mac towers, and that must really scream.
I bet it does. And I know I've heard some MacBook users report that their computers run better using Linux than they do with the native operating system, the OS X. I haven't heard any reports on the new towers, but who knows? I'm sure somebody's done it. And if anybody in our listening audience has done it, let us know.
Sure.
Especially if you're in the chat room right now. We'll look. We'll look. Don't be shy.
Okay.
Okay, we got two more suggestions from Google on Will Linux. The first one is, will Linux run on my computer? Well, I don't know what your computer is, but most likely, yes. From Acer and Apple through HP and Lenovo to System 76 and Zereason, Linux is designed to run on any computer. And of course, Linux runs particularly well on the newest, fanciest hardware, but it runs well on almost any vintage machine. And in fact, older computers designed to run Windows XP, as we've already discussed, can easily be outfitted with the newest, modernist, fully supported Linux distribution, and it will likely run better than it did with the previous operating system that was installed on it at the factory.
All right.
Okay, and last, another short answer here. Will Linux run Windows games? The answer is yes and no, and you can go back and look at can Linux run Windows games for the answers. And that's in the show notes too. So that wraps it up. We've got lots of links in the show notes, and we've even got a link to a whole article that I wrote on the Going Linux website that I used as my cheat sheet for the discussion we just had. So if you want a more in-depth treatment of what we just described, there you go.
All right. All right, well then I think that moves us into the next phase of the Computer America show, where we're going to go to Computer America email. And again, you can read these emails along with us. Just go to, again, the show notes page at computeramerica.com, and you can see them, the link right there. It'll say email. Just click on it, and you can read that. And this is basically feedback, emails, everything. And we're going to start off with Will. Okay. And evidently he provides not some Linux, but some OS X tips.
Yeah, so let's read what he says. So he says, "Hi, I listened to your Computer America episode number 72 podcast. There are a few projects that will help make you feel more at home using OS X. So in that episode, on that appearance on Computer America, I mentioned that my new employer has provided me with a MacBook Air as my computer.
Yep,
and so I was getting used to the keyboard and all those other things that take place in your mind when you switch operating systems. So Will took pity on me and provided 3 links. So first, a couple of links that we've included in the show notes, of course, around remapping your keys on a MacBook to whatever you want. So it's a hack according to what they talk about in these links, but essentially it's a program that you can install that allows you to remap the keyboard keys to whatever you want them to be. What I found was the MacBook Air has a Apple keyboard, and the Logitech keyboard that I use with my other computers, and I use Synergy to cross-platform control multiple computers from a single keyboard and mouse. It's got the Windows configuration, so even if I reconfigure the keys, something's not right either on the MacBook Air or on the Logitech keyboard. So I'm just learning to use the Mac configuration. Not a big deal.
Thank you.
It's
By the way,
the muscle memory that gets you.
Internet Cat in the chat room asked the question. He wanted to know whether he said, "Will Linux make me better looking?" And I said, perhaps they have a variety of skins available for you to try.
Actually, I'd like to take a crack at this one. Apparently, thanks to everything from the It Crowd to Silicon Valley, which I think is a TV show, and a couple other TV shows, apparently nerdy is in.
Well, just look at the Big Bang Theory that predated all of those. Yeah.
Exactly. And nothing screams nerdy like, oh yeah, I use a couple different distributions of Linux. Would you like to hear about them over drinks? You know, I think it will make it better looking.
Maybe so. To some people, anyway.
You have to find the right girl or guy, obviously.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. The other package that this gentleman Will provided is the homebrew, right? So it's the missing package repository, the package manager that comes with Linux that doesn't come on OS X. Well, there's a way to get a package manager on OS X as well, of course. And it doesn't link into the Linux repositories, but it does allow you to get to GitHub and download some Stack Exchange things and that sort of stuff. And if none of that makes any sense to you, don't worry about it. You probably don't need it.
Fair enough.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's move along to Richard.
Yep.
Poor Richard has an upgrade. Has upgrade issues.
Yes, he does. So he says, "Hi guys, I recently upgraded from Linux Mint 15 to 17, and have had a challenge in easily transferring installed packages and applications. Apt on CD has failed me, although it's worked in the past. The Linux Mint software backup, which is a backup program provided on Linux Mint out of the box, used to work, but it's been broken for a while now in my version. And finally, I tried what you recommended, to use dpkg, which is a program under Linux. But now, after installing Linux Mint 17, I get this error: dpkg error, operation requires read-write access to dpkg status area. Any advice? I'm not finding reliable advice for getting any of these options running. I now have Linux Mint 17 installed, and maybe just do it all manually at this point, which is kind of sucky. So thanks, Richard. So I did email back and forth with Richard, and we came to sort of the conclusion that perhaps when he installed Linux Mint 17, he was installing it from a CD that didn't write correctly onto the CD and was corrupted, or perhaps the package, the ISO image that he downloaded off the Linux Mint site wasn't downloaded correctly. There was an interruption in his network connection or something that caused it not to be downloaded properly. And of course, there are MD5 sums and things that you can check for the latter. And if the CD didn't burn correctly, you can just burn another copy and try it again. And I'm not sure what his solution was, but the answer to the other implied question on the Mint backup utility, it does work in Linux Mint 17, and I've installed it on many devices, or many computers, Linux Mint 17 with various desktop environments, and use that backup. It does work just fine. So I'm really thinking that something got corrupted on his install, and he should probably reinstall. Hard to swallow, but hey, you've got a nice backup that you made. Use it. And there are lots of ways to back up things on Linux, not the least of which is that backup utility, and there are plenty of other backup utilities you can install and use to backup, or simply just copy your home directory to another hard drive. That's the simplest way.
Okay, I think we should move along to the next one. Again, this is from Dell, not the computer company, but
Dell with one L.
Dell with one L has a question about burning 64-bit ISO images using a 32-bit machine, and about XFCE versus Cinnamon desktops.
Okay, so he writes, Larry, great podcasts. I burned an image of Linux Mint 17 XFCE 32-bit. Worked great. When I tried to burn Linux Mint 17 XFCE 64-bit, the burn failed. Can you burn a 64-bit image on a 32-bit machine using Bracero, which is the program you use to burn disks in Linux Mint? I was wondering also, is Linux Mint 17 Cinnamon more Windows-like than XFCE, than the XFCE ones that I've downloaded? Keep up the great podcast. I really like the Computer America ones, but all are great. Thanks for your help with this matter. Okay. So,
thank you, Dell, by the way. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate that. All right, so 64-bit images on a 32-bit machine. The image itself is an image of a disk that, when you install it, will only install to a 64-bit machine. So if you try to install a 64-bit version of an operating system on a 32-bit machine, it won't. Unlike installing a 32-bit operating system on a 64-bit machine, it'll work just fine. But since what you're doing on that 32-bit machine, even though it's a 64-bit image, it will burn because bits are bits. It doesn't care that the ISO image is a Linux distribution that's designed to run on 64-bit machines. It will burn just fine. And if the burning of that 64-bit image failed and the 32-bit version burned just fine, I would change the settings on Bracero and have it burn more slowly. It's possible that because the 64-bit image is a different size, that perhaps it needs a little bit slower to run and to actually burn, or perhaps the CD that you're using to burn the second image wasn't as high quality as the first one. So just slow it down a little bit. It'll probably burn just fine, and you'll be able to install it on your 64-bit computers going forward. Now, regarding which one is more Windows-like, Cinnamon or XFCE, Cinnamon is a little bit more Windows-like from the perspective that it has the 3D compositing and animated plugins and so on available for you, and special effects and so on. XFCE, you can install those effects, but it doesn't come out of the box like that. So out of the box, if you make no changes, Cinnamon is a little bit more Windows-like because of the 3D compositing. But you can make XFCE do just about everything that Cinnamon does and look just as nice with 3D compositing, but you have to install those packages separately because XFCE is designed as a more lightweight desktop environment. Cinnamon you might think of as a little more like Windows 7 in the way it looks and works. XFCE you might think of it as a little bit more like Windows NT or Windows 98 or something like that. With
those are two big draws.
Yeah, there you go. But out of the box, if you get the XFCE version of Linux Mint, it will have a lot of nice features that make it look a lot better than Windows NT or Windows 98 ever did. The Linux Mint folks have applied some design experience to it and to make it look very, very nice. If you were to just install XFCE on your own, it would come out looking a lot like Windows NT. But the Mint folks, they did a good job making it look very, very nice. And out of the box, you'd be hard-pressed without looking a little closely to tell the difference between Mint 17 with Cinnamon and Mint 17 running XFCE. They look very, very similar when you first install them.
All
right.
All righty. Good. Well, let's move on to Jonathan,
who's
a founding member of the Accessible Computing Foundation. And now, is the accessible? Is that for physically challenged?
Yes. So anyone with physical impairments of any sort. So it's for blind or quadriplegic or deaf, and they provide computers for people with any sort of impairment.
All right, good.
Okay.
And I'm glad that he's listening. He's a founding member of the Accessible Computing Foundation. Jonathan is, and he's asked us to announce the Sonar GNU/Linux GNU Linux.
Yes, GNU Linux. Okay, so Jonathan is a member of the Free Software Foundation as well, and they like to refer to Linux as GNU Linux because technically that's what it is. So that's what he calls it. So he writes, "Hello, Larry and Bill. Bill, of course, being my co-host on the Going Linux podcast. I wanted to announce the release of Sonar 2014.1 on your podcast. Sonar has moved from being based off of Ubuntu to now being based off of Manjaro Linux, and this is the first release using Manjaro as its base. Now, Sonar will always have the latest and greatest in assistive technology for its users. Sonar uses GNOME as its default desktop, but we will be releasing a Mate version in a few weeks. We have been working very closely with the Mate team, and they have done a lot of work to ensure the accessibility of the Mate desktop. We hope to have a Mate release in a few weeks. Here are some of the features of Sonar 2014.1. It runs GNOME 3.12. It runs the Orca screen reader for blind users. It has screen magnification for low vision users, a font for users, or a font to use for people with dyslexia, and on-screen keyboards for people with low motor skills, and eye and head tracking software to move the cursor on the screen using a webcam. So it can track your eyes or your head motion, and you can move the cursor that way. This is the best release of Sonar yet. Here is the site. I'm also free to do an interview on your podcast, which we did on the Going Linux podcast as our most recent episode. I interviewed Jonathan on the show, and he announced on that show, and I think it was an exclusive on our podcast, that they're also working on a version for the Raspberry Pi.
Wow.
He says, thanks for the great show, www.sonargnulinux.com. And I have to say, that was a very, very interesting interview with Jonathan, as always. We had him on a few years ago on one episode, or one of my appearances on Computer America, and he was talking about working with Linux and developing Linux for people who need accessibility in their Linux. I have to say that I've been donating some of my time to help the Accessible Computing Foundation, and Jonathan in particular, with the project Sonar. And I've taken on the task of improving the website. And as Jonathan says, it looks like a blind guy designed it. You have to understand that Jonathan designed it, and he is blind, so and it did. Yeah, and if you look in the Wayback Machine, you'll see how it looked before, and if you go there now, you'll see how it looks now. And all I did was change the WordPress theme, add a few graphics, and interestingly, on their download page, I did something relatively simple. I put things in a table to make it a little easier visually for people who do have the benefit of sight to be able to organize what they're looking at. And it turns out that in my redesign, he's got two versions of Sonar, a 32-bit version and a 64-bit version. And I remembered to include in the description of the download links the 32-bit as distinct from the 64-bit version, and that was fine. But I neglected on the MD5 sum that he has posted there to indicate that one was for 32-bit and the other was for 64-bit. And you know, for somebody who's sighted, it was very obvious because it was in the table. The MD5 sum for the 32-bit was in the column with all the other 32-bit stuff, and the MD5 sum for the 64-bit was in the column for all the 64-bit stuff. But I had Jonathan read it with his screen reader just to make sure that I didn't miss something, and in fact I did. I hadn't put that in, and he caught it immediately. So, you know, it is deceivingly difficult to create a web page that is accessible for a screen reader. So it's nice to have somebody who actually does use a screen reader to proofread that kind of work. So thanks, Jonathan, for that, and I'm happy to help, donating my time to help you out and help out the Sonar GNU Linux project.
Excellent. All right.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Do we have time to do another one? I think we're coming up to our break.
We got a really short one here, maybe.
Okay. Matt, okay. Matt asked about Larry's favorite cross-platform utility.
Yeah. He wrote, I seem to remember you talking about synergy to share a mouse and keyboard between systems. Is that right? How do or did you like it? I really appreciate the way you take the time to answer questions in this community. I am glad to be part of it. Cheers. Well, Matt, yes, I really love Synergy. I've been using it for almost 10 years. Cross-platform. I started when I was using Windows before I knew better, and I now use it as something that allows me to use a single keyboard and mouse to control my Linux computers and my OS X computer for work. And I sit at my desk with a single keyboard and mouse and control them both, and have done that for years, and they just keep making that utility better and better and better. And it's free for all versions of operating systems out there. So if you need something like that, I highly recommend it.
All right. Okay, we're going to come back with more of these emails that Larry collects for us. The next one's going to be from Bill, who's having trouble with his bootloader. In the meantime, you're listening to the Computer America Show on the Blog Talk Radio Network. on the Boost Radio Network, on the IRN Radio Network. We got a great chat room going along there. Please join us in our live IRC chat room. And we'll continue on. We have another news tip bulletin review from Marty Winston coming up here on the show. We always have 2 new ones every single week, and if you missed it on the first shows, you can hear it now. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back. You're listening to the Computer America Show. Stay with us. It's our All Linux show.
This is a special alert to all Americans who own a vehicle with less than 120,000 miles with an auto warranty about to expire or no warranty coverage at all. Due to a decline in the economy and major car companies filing for bankruptcy, Cover America Auto Care has announced revolutionary, inexpensive mechanical breakdown coverage that is now available to the general public to save consumers thousands on auto repairs. An open phone line has been established for drivers to call who own a vehicle that is less than 10 years old for a free 5-minute quote and to see if you qualify. The number is 800-483-2514. Drivers who are covered with this auto protection will not have to pay for a covered repair again. This is the auto coverage now sweeping across America at a fraction of what dealerships charge and is now available to the public by calling today. The number to call is 800-483-2514. 800-483-2514. That's 800-483-2514.
Don't complain about your cable bill going up and up and up. Do something about it. Grab a pencil and jot down this special number, 1-866-663-MY-TV. The more cable TV rates go up, the better digital satellite TV looks. So, disable the cable and get more of your favorite channels in 100% digital quality for less money. Call 1-866-663-MY-TV right now to sign up for packages starting as low as $19.99 and up to 4 rooms. And there's no equipment to buy. That includes your free HD TV upgrade, your free DVR upgrade, and your free professional installation. And the best part, the pristine digital picture and sound. Call 1-866-663-MY-TV. So, what are you waiting for? Pull out your major credit or debit card. Call 1-866-663-MY-TV. 1-866-663-MY-TV. Disable the cable, cut costs, and get more. Call 1-866-663-MY-TV. 1-866-663-MY-TV.
Hello, friends of exercise. This is Marty Winston for Computer America with a news tips bulletin review of the Withings Pulse O2. We talked earlier about the Withings blood pressure monitor and the app on either iOS or Android 4 or later devices. The same app also collects information from their Pulse O2 product. When we got it, it looked like a lot of pieces just to measure pulse rate and blood oxygen level, but that quickly sorted out. The main piece, the active module, comes with a strap for wearing on your wrist, a clip for wearing on your clothes, and a charging cable, so the collection is more about adding dexterity than adding complexity. The misleading first impression continued with the name, but the happy result is that there's even more here than the name implies, starting with a pedometer. The module's face displays a lot of interesting data that the app can record, but we're still leaving out a level of usefulness. If your smartphone is with you as you work out, it also tracks running, elevation, distance, and calories. Bottom line, if you're somebody who, when you burn, yearn for more data, the Withings Pulse O2 activity tracker is no slacker. This is Marty Winston with a News Tips Bulletin Review for Computer America.
Welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is our All Linux show tonight. I keep wanting to say Tuesday. It's not Tuesday. It's Thursday.
The third Thursday of the month. And you know, it's interesting because we had that gentleman who wanted to talk about Linux call us on literally almost every single show. And we kept saying,
now he doesn't show up.
And now he doesn't show up. You know? So.
Oh, I'm sure he'll call about 2 minutes before the show ends. It'll be fine. And yeah, you know, so we're doing Linux topics, and I just gotta say, you know, Synergy, everyone loves this. Seems to really like this the application.
Yeah, and I noticed just now that the link to their website they changed their link. It used to be synergy-foss.org, and now it's synergy-project.org. So I'm going to have to go update the links on the Going Linux website accordingly. And so if you're looking for it, it's synergy-project.org. And you'll see right there on their main page that they've got keyboard and a mouse sitting there. Looks like an Apple keyboard and a mouse controlling a Linux computer on the left, a Windows computer in the middle, and a Mac computer on the right-hand side.
You mean we weren't the only logo? We weren't the only logo you had to change tonight?
Okay. Yeah, that's true. Yes, indeed.
Okay.
It changed the logo on our website.
Okay.
The Computer America logo.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Shall we go on to Bill's email?
And he's having trouble with his bootloader.
Yeah.
Okay.
Poor guy.
Yeah.
He says, "Hi Larry, hi Bill. How are you?" "Oh, I'm fine. Have been listening to the podcast for a few years, and it is the second time I write you in an email. A friend has just bought a new machine and has given me her old Lenovo ThinkCentre A55 8706-A18.
Wow.
It has an Intel, very attractive name, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's an Intel Celeron D CPU, 3.2 gigahertz. It has an Intel 946GZ graphics card. It's x86 MMX SSE2 integrated graphics controller. Easy for me to say.
Mm-hmm.
I have tried installing Linux Mint 17 on it using a USB drive, but the screen shows a Control-Alt-Delete at the upper right corner on a blank screen immediately after boot. A Google search suggests that it may have to do with something called frame buffer. I tried to follow the suggestions by adding no API to the grub menu at startup. However, I somehow cannot get into the grub menu at boot. I have tried holding down the right shift key, pressing F6, pressing F4 during the boot sequence to no avail. The same Control-Alt-Delete comes up every time. In my desperation, I tried installing OpenSUSE 12.1, and the installation was a success. Now I'm scratching my head. After a few days, not sure I like OpenSUSE and would like to go back to Linux Mint. Would appreciate any advice that you can offer. Well, Bill, that no API may indeed be the solution to getting things installed. And we've included a link in the show notes to how to get to your grub startup menu and how to go in there and edit it. So if you're not having much luck getting to that screen where you can get to the boot menu, it may be that the version of Linux Mint that you were trying to install didn't have, well, you did say it was Mint 17. I was going to say that it used grub instead of using an EFI bootloader, and maybe the machine you have uses EFI or UEFI, but no, I don't think so. It's sufficiently old. It probably just uses the standard bootloader for Windows. So grub should work, and if you can't get into grub, those instructions in the show notes should help you out. It's not something that I can get into on a show like this because it's something where you have to see what's going on in the machine. But maybe the information we provided would help you out. And it's possible that OpenSUSE had a different out-of-the-box configuration that allowed it to install successfully. It may use that API or no API setting by default, and that may be why it installed without any trouble at all. So if you still have OpenSUSE installed, you might want to take a look at the grub menu and see if that's already in there in the grub entry for booting OpenSUSE, and see what's there. And then when you get to the grub menu in Mint 17, you might want to try that. So give that a try.
All right. Okay. Um, let's go to Andrew,
Mm-hmm.
who asks the question: are you still doing the Gone Linux stories?
Yes. So on our podcast, we have a segment called Gone Linux, where our listeners write in or send us in a voicemail or record something on, send it in as an audio file or whatever, and tell us success stories of how they or somebody they know has gone Linux. So this is Andrew, according to his email, he says, "This is Andrew, and I have a gone Linux story for you. My fiance texted me at work about 3 weeks ago and told me that Windows had ticked her off for the last time and wanted me to put Linux on her laptop. Not something that would be a normal reaction, but so obviously Andrew's been talking to her about Linux. So he continues. So I put in a 40 gigabyte hard drive and put Mageia Linux on it and turned her loose on it for 2 weeks. And she liked it. So I put the other hard drive back in and dual booted it with Windows 7 for her Photoshop, which of course, if she's using the latest version, it doesn't run under Windows or run under Linux or under Wine. So that's one of the reasons why people dual boot. And Linux for gaming and everything else. Now she's happy. She's using Linux now most of the time. It took me over a year to get her to try Linux, and now she likes using Linux. So there's a good Gone Linux story for you. And you might want to suggest, that she try out the GIMP, which is an alternative photo editing software that runs natively in Linux. It also happens to run natively in Windows. Have her give it a try. Maybe she'll like it. Although if she's been using Photoshop for a long time, the keyboard shortcuts and so on she's learned for Photoshop typically don't work in the GIMP. And many users of Photoshop who've used it for a long time or use it professionally are very adept at using keyboard shortcuts instead of mouse clicks and drags, and it takes a little getting used to do anything new. So she may prefer to dual boot Windows just to use Photoshop. At least she's using Linux most of the time, so that's great.
Yeah, I mean, GIMP is very, very close to Photoshop. I mean, it's as I would think is it as powerful as Photoshop? I mean, it has all.
No, it doesn't have all of the features of Photoshop, and it does do things a little bit differently. But for the average person that uses Photoshop to crop pictures and maybe do red eye reduction or that sort of thing, GIMP will do all of that just fine. Most other, even less powerful photo editing programs will do that just fine. There are plenty of professional and semi-professional graphics artists that use the GIMP for creating their graphics, just as there are Photoshop users doing the same thing. So it is as powerful. Does it have all the features? No. Does it have additional features in some areas? Yes. Okay. So it really depends on, does it do what you want it to do, whether or not it's going to work for you.
Okay.
Give it a try. You can try it on Windows if you don't have a Linux machine laying around.
Okay.
To try it on.
All right. Well, I can't believe this, but we've actually made it to our last email. We haven't done that in a long time, We
have not.
No, and this last one is from Amy,
who
answers a question that we asked her, evidently. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So, Amy is a lawyer. She also happens to be a woman of the cloth, shall we say? She has dual professions. So she's a lawyer in the religious profession.
Okay.
And she uses Linux as her operating system to do both her law work and her religious work. So Amy writes saying, on the show, you asked about how I handle different file formats in a Linux-only office. I generally work in .odt, which is the open file format of OpenOffice and LibreOffice. But when sharing files, I use one of two strategies. When I'm doing a lot of document collaboration, I will use Google Docs.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, for most of my work, I send files in PDF format. If there is a need to edit, I will send the files in two formats, PDF and .doc. I never send them in .docx, which is recent Windows Office or Microsoft Office format. I suspect there's more to her email than this, but just to answer your question, Craig, I suspect that the reason she does that is the docx format is ever changing with updates to Microsoft Office. They do tweaks to the file format, and some of the things that they've done to make it different from the standard .doc format is they've made it XML compatible, but in doing that, they've created their own proprietary version of how they format things in XML. And so it's not standard, and so it's not interoperable with other Office suites as much as it is in the .doc. Now, .doc doesn't use XML format, so it's not as modern a format, but it's been around a lot longer, and Microsoft's not fiddling with it. So the creators of OpenOffice and LibreOffice have had time to reverse engineer it and make their Office suite compatible with that format, much more than it is with the docx format.
Okay.
And so that's probably why she uses that slightly older format, but a format that's more guaranteed to be compatible with OpenOffice, LibreOffice, Microsoft Office, regardless of which version you're talking about.
I understand. All right.
So she says also, when formatting, I use paragraph styles rather than a lot of manual formatting. It seems that that converts more cleanly. And to explain paragraph styles, rather than use the button for bold, there is a paragraph style that if you've done anything for a web page, you can use a .b tag or an angle bracket B tag for bold in HTML on a web page. You can also use in angle brackets the word strong instead. So strong is a more generic way of formatting in HTML on a web page, so that regardless of what browser you're using, it understands strong a lot more than it understands B as bold. Same thing in a word processor program. If you use the little B icon, it will put the equivalent of a angle brackets B to indicate bold, rather than using a paragraph style. But what it'll do is it's not as interoperable between the various word processor programs. When you use a paragraph style, it allows OpenOffice, Microsoft Office, LibreOffice, I don't know, any of the other Office programs. It will know that that paragraph style is designed to make the word or the words that you've made bold appear as bold. But what will happen is, if you change the formatting of the page, for example, and you can use kind of a theme in a word processor document to change all of the text style from one format to another throughout the document. If you use paragraph styles, it will work regardless of what operating system you're in, what Office suite you're in, or what theme you're using, because a paragraph style is standard. Whereas a lot of the manual formatting, as Amy calls it, is not. And so that's, I think, what helps it to convert more cleanly. It's a more standardized way of formatting your document, regardless of whether its file extension is .doc or .odt or something else. So it's just a little cleaner. So she continues, for me, the change in file format isn't much of an issue. Most legal documents are pretty flat text anyway, not a lot of formatting. And as a side note, there are a lot of lawyers still using WordPerfect.
Oh, okay.
And I'm sure it's WordPerfect for DOS as well.
No.
Please, Amy. So yeah, I've seen that on when I've gone to my lawyer for a will update or something. My lawyer still uses WordPerfect
You make fun of him.
in
You-
Windows.
you
I'm
should-
not making fun of him. I'm just saying they do.
You should make fun of him, I'm saying.
The man's writing your will. He's the last person you want to make fun of.
Oh yeah, there you go. I'm paying him enough. He can afford to buy whatever he wants to buy. But if he wants to use WordPerfect, he can go ahead and use it.
I'm pulling out a typewriter or something to do.
No, it's like using what is that website altering software you used until like 2 years ago? Front Page.
Oh.
That's like using Front Page in 2011.
Oh, that was terrible.
That's only compatible with Internet Explorer 6, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Which is pretty much unable to display any web page that's not written using Front Page.
WordPerfect and WordStar. Yeah, my gosh.
Yeah. WordStar, yes.
Last
That's
from the
another
past.
good one.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah, I learned word processing on a Wang word processor.
oh my. You have an IBM Selectric typewriter. At least I had a little ball, So
You know what? We had one until about 2 years ago, sitting in my garage. It hadn't been used in 10 years, but my wife learned to type on it, and she loved the thing, so she wanted to keep it around. They're still servicing them, believe it or not.
they're good typewriters. I mean,
Solid.
they're really solid. They were really. I mean, they did things you never saw on a time. I mean, they had an erase function. It would actually automatically white out letters. And you could go back and retype. And of course, they would never jam because it didn't have little legs coming up. It was a ball.
Right.
And it had some onboard intelligence, so it would sense which key you were hitting first if you hit two keys simultaneously.
What are you guys talking about?
Well, the thing is, editing a document was a little painful because you couldn't really go back in the mid-paragraph and just kind of insert another word or two. It just didn't work that way.
Later versions of the Selectric, though, when you could actually type a letter and into memory, and then you could put a press sheet and then hit it, and it would actually retype the letter again. And it would actually pause if you wanted. It was a deer, and it would stop. So you could put it, and then you would type in the Joe or Sam and the name, hit comma, and then it would continue on typing the letter. I mean, this is what they had back then before we had computers. Yeah,
and it was shortly, Ben. It was shortly after they stopped using that hammer and chisel and the stone chablet. The Selectric typewriter. So yeah. And it was really rough though. You had to actually to send the document to somebody. You had to fax it, or you had to put it in an envelope, lick the envelope, and put a stamp on it, and put it in the mailbox.
Yeah,
something else you may not be familiar with.
Fax.
Yeah, fax.
That's weird.
Yes.
That's a weird word.
Yeah. Yes. Fax. Short for facsimile.
I doubt that.
Yes, it was. That's what it's fax.
It was.
Is it?
In fact, in the early days of fax, they didn't even. Back in my day, the legal profession didn't even trust that the receiving fax machine was getting an exact image of what was sent, so they didn't consider sending the message electronically a viable legal document. So you couldn't sign the copy of your will that someone faxed you. You would only be able to proofread it, and then the copy you received in the mail a week later you would sign, and then you would send it back to the lawyer a week later for him or her to sign, and then they'd send back the final copy back to you. So 3 weeks later you had your will.
And you probably died by that time.
And so did the Pony Express, because they had to go through the Midwest, through the snow and the buffalo. That's crazy.
Yeah. This explains why the U.S. mail system isn't quite as healthy as it was back in those days. They had more business back then.
And now we have electronic signatures and and things that we can actually get business done. Internet Ken in the chat room says he used to repair daisy wheel printers. I remember the daisy wheel printers. You know,
Yes.
there was like a little starburst, and the letters were on a little circle, and the letters were on the edge of the circle, and it would spin around, and it would make the most god awful noise. Especially
You could tell the daisy wheel printer by sound.
man, it was loud. You could hear it down the block. I mean, they were really loud printers. The Cume.
Yeah, it was worse than dot matrix printers.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, a lot
Ben's
worse.
just going, what is this? Oh, what's all the terminology?
Everyone has these horror stories, and don't get me wrong, about 1 in every 6 Computer America shows devolves into, back in my day when I first started using computers, but how did technology take off if I hear all these horror stories?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's, what is it? It's not Moore's law. It's not Bronson's law. What is the law that technology continues to accelerate and double every year or something like
That's
that?
Moore's law, isn't it?
It is Moore's law. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. But back in my day, it was more seniors' law. It was more fathers. Yeah, exactly. Look at all the people piling into the chat room now, and it's in the last 5 minutes of the show.
Wow.
What's going on?
They must have their time zones wrong or something.
Exactly. Well, well.
You know what?
They're here for the next episode.
There are so many people in the chat room, and there are so many people asking about this show that we're just going to replay it again right after this. We're going to have an encore. We're just going to hit the tape, and we're going to start over again.
See, he's on tape. Now, when was the last time you saw a tape? Gosh.
Tape. Yes. We're taping the show electronically.
Yeah, exactly.
Without touching tape.
Yeah.
Yes, you got caught, Ben.
Yeah. All the anachronisms.
Well, back in my day, which was about 20 years after your guys' day, apparently.
They actually used tape. And with videotape, you had to actually slice it with a razor and then make sure that it was lined up. You had to slice it on an angle to get it lined up properly.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I remember editing in the radio. They used to have the big reel-to-reel tape players, and then they would have a razor blade, and you'd cut it. And then then of course the guy that used to do it, then we got into digital editing and everything. And I looked at him and said, "Do you miss the tape?" And he just looked at me. He said, "No."
So he was still doing the editing, even though his skills were in the magnetic tape. And
he went to school. He went to class and to learn how to use these digital editors, and
all these newfangled things.
No, he wasn't that old. No.
Oh, okay.
He wasn't that old. No. He started out when he was younger, but there it is.
Unlike the buggy whip manufacturers.
Buggy whips, yeah, exactly. Well, this was a good show, and again, you can see everything. We have the links up at our show notes page at computeramerica.com, and Larry, it was a lot of fun. It was a fun ride tonight, and again, go to the Going Linux website at goinglinux.com, and of course we have a link to the Going Linux website on our show notes page, as well as our friends page at the Computer America website. Check it out. So, Larry, stay with us to the end of the show because we have a little after the show that we do.
Party. We have a party.
Yeah. Little party, yeah. Now, coming up tomorrow night, we're going to have Ralph Bond. Ralph Bond normally is on the second Friday of every month, but he was on sabbatical. He went to Scotland. So, for a couple of weeks. So he's fresh back from Scotland. I'm sure he'll have some interesting Scottish stories to tell us. And are
we allowed to say those on the air?
Yes, I'm sure he can. I'm sure they have airable versions of that. And he and his wife went on a sabbatical to Scotland for 2 weeks. And of course, he's still with Autodesk. And now they got a promotion, and he has a new website too. So if you go to our friends page at computeramerica.com, you can see the new Ralph Bond website. We have it up there. And the only thing that he has featured on it right now is us.
90 seconds.
So, what website is that? I only have is ralphbond.com.
No, it's if you go to our friends page, you'll go there and you'll see his new website. And the method I put it here. I'll send you the link because I'll put that in the name so you can see it for yourself. There's his new website.
Good for Ralph Bond, though.
Yeah, absolutely. But it only talks about Computer America. At least he's got that up, and he actually has rebroadcast of the show up on there as well. So, and some of the things we're going to be talking about with him
60 seconds
is we've got a new ultimate zombie killing car. That's one of the things. Also, he's got You can navigate bike lanes. There's new vibrating handlebars for bikes. It's got, and also, can an app make you a better person? So some of the stories we're going to be talking about on tomorrow night's show. And the best tablets for back to school 2014. So we're going to be talking about those. We got lots of fun.
Spoiler alert, it's all the iPad.
Yeah. and so that's about wraps it up. Thanks again, Larry, for being here. It was a lot of fun, and we'll see you next month on another All Linux show. So until tomorrow night, this is Craig Crossman hoping that your hard disk never becomes floppy. Where was that Linux caller?
10 seconds.
Show up.
We'll see you tomorrow night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
Okay, and we're out of the broadcast, but we're still on Google Hangouts. And thanks, everybody, for watching. We have a lot of viewers out there watching the show. Thanks again for watching our All Linux show tonight, and we will see you tomorrow night with Ralph Bond back from Scotland and his tour.
All right.
All righty.
Yeah, if there are any people from Scotland in the chat room there, it's a Bravik Munnik.
You got to use his Irish brogues for us.
I'm Scottish, but close. Other side of the pond.
All right. Good night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.